The phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the quiet of my kitchen. I was elbow deep in soapy water, scrubbing the remnants of dinner off the plates when I saw the name flash across the screen. Mom. I hesitated, staring at the device as if it were a ghost from another life. It had been years since we last spoke, a brief, awkward exchange at my grandmother's funeral. Before that, it was the day everything fell apart, the day I realized I was never their priority. I dried my hands on a towel, my heart pounding as I answered the call. Hello? Bella, it's Mom. Her voice was thick, strained. Something was wrong. Mom? What is it? I gripped the phone tighter, bracing myself for whatever news she was about to deliver. I need you to come over. It's urgent. Urgent. The word hung heavy in the air, pulling me back to a place I had spent years trying to escape. I should have asked more questions, should have said no, but something in her voice, a desperation I hadn't heard before, made me agree. I'll be there soon. An hour later, I pulled into their driveway, my hands stiff around the wheel. The house looked the same, the chipped wooden steps, the flickering porch light, but everything felt different. I had dropped Emma off at my friend Claire's place, assuring her it would only take a couple of hours. She had looked at me with those wide, curious eyes, wondering why I was going to see the grandparents she had never met. As I stood on the doorstep, I considered turning around and walking away. But the memory of my mother's voice, the urgency in her tone, kept me rooted in place. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. Mom answered the door, her eyes red and swollen. Bella, you came, she said, her voice trembling. Behind her, Dad stood stiffly, his expression unreadable. The tension in the air was thick, palpable. What's going on? I asked, arms crossed protectively over my chest. They exchanged glances before Dad finally spoke. We're going to lose the house. I didn't react right away. I waited, knowing there was more to the story. There always was. Your sister, Mom started, and just like that, the familiar twist of resentment coiled in my gut. Of course, it was about Lisa. She asked us to take out a loan for Tom's business, Dad explained. We used the house as collateral. I exhaled sharply. Let me guess, the business failed. They both nodded, their faces a mix of shame and desperation. They stopped making payments, Mom said, her voice breaking. We can't cover it. We need help. Then came the part that truly made my blood run cold. We know you're doing well, Dad added quickly. Your apartment, your rental income. You're in a position to help us. I let out a short, bitter laugh. They had chosen Lisa over me at every turn, and now they wanted me to save them. The irony was almost too much to bear. You're serious? I asked, shaking my head in disbelief. After everything, you think I'm just going to swoop in and fix this? They looked at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had, but as I stood there staring at the people who had caused me so much pain, I realized the real question wasn't whether I needed them. It was why, after all these years, they suddenly needed me. I turned on my heel before they could say another word, walking straight out the door. As I drove away, my hands clenched the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life or the most important decision I'd ever make. But one thing was clear. I couldn't let them pull me back into their toxic world without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of internal struggle. I wrestled with the decision, the past heavy on my shoulders. But every time I looked at Emma, her innocent face filled with curiosity and hope, I knew I had to consider it. She deserved a chance to know her grandparents, to have a family, even if that family had never been there for me. I confided in my friend Sarah over coffee, seeking her advice. You must be crazy to even consider this, she said, her eyes wide with disbelief. I know, I sighed, stirring my coffee absentmindedly. But Emma deserves a chance to know them. And you know what? Maybe I deserve a chance to heal. Sarah tilted her head, considering my words. And what do you get out of this, Bella? What do you gain from helping them? I didn't have an answer for that, not yet. But as I sat there, the weight of the past pressing down on me, I knew I had to find out. For Emma, for myself, and maybe, just maybe, for the family I never had. A week later, I found myself pulling into my parents' driveway again, this time with Emma bouncing excitedly in the passenger seat. The moment my mother saw her, she burst into tears. Oh my goodness, she's beautiful, she gasped, hands flying to her mouth. Dad stood stiffly behind her, his expression unreadable. I watched as Emma charmed them completely, showing them her drawings and telling them about school. They listened to every word, their faces softening in a way I had never seen before. And for the first time, I saw a regret, not just for the house, not just for their situation, but for me, for what they had done. As we spent the afternoon together, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. Maybe we could heal the wounds of the past and build something new, something better. But little did I know the true test of our fragile reunion was yet. The decision to move in with my parents was not an easy one. It was a delicate balance between the desire to give Emma a sense of family and the need to protect myself from the pain of the past. But as I watched her interact with my parents, her laughter filling the house, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we can make this work. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. I rented out my apartment, using the income to cover the loan payments. My parents' house, once a symbol of their pride and my pain, started to feel like home again. Mom made breakfast every morning, something she had never done when I was growing up. The scent of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the air, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that things could be different this time. Dad started teaching Emma chess, their weekly matches becoming a tradition they both looked forward to. I watched from the sidelines, a mixture of emotions swirling within me. There was joy in seeing Emma so happy, but also a lingering sadness for the childhood I never had. Yet I pushed those feelings aside, focusing on the present and the future we were building together. Work became a sanctuary for me. With the house running smoothly, I found myself taking on more responsibilities at the office. My boss noticed my hard work and called me into his office one afternoon. Bella, we've noticed your dedication and the quality of your work. How would you feel about a promotion? The offer came as a surprise, but I didn't hesitate. I'll take it, I said, surprising even myself. The promotion meant more money, but also more travel. Before I would have turned it down immediately, a single mom with no real support system couldn't afford to be away from home. But now, with my parents' help, it seemed possible. The first time I had to leave for a business trip, I was a nervous wreck. 3 days felt like an eternity, and I found myself worrying about Emma constantly. But my parents sent me pictures of her doing homework, playing chess with dad, and baking cookies with mom. She was happy, and that was all that mattered. As the days turned into weeks, we settled into a comfortable routine. The house felt lighter, the tension of the past slowly fading away. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I had finally found my place in this family. But then the cracks began to show. It started with small things. Mom's phone would ring, and she would disappear into her bedroom, emerging minutes later with red rimmed eyes. I didn't have to ask who was on the other end. I knew it was Lisa. I started noticing other things, two bank notifications flashing across mom's phone when I was setting up her new tablet, small transfers always to Lisa's account. It didn't take long to figure out that they were still supporting her, even as I was covering their loan payments. One evening, I finally confronted mom about it. Why are you sending Lisa money? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked startled for a second, then quickly composed herself. She has 2 kids to support, Bella. She's struggling. So are you? I shot back. You can't afford to send her money, Mom. Not when you're relying on me cover your loan payments. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. You wouldn't understand, Bella. She needs help. I almost laughed. Wouldn't understand. I had been struggling my whole life and no one had ever come to my rescue. But I let it go for Emma's sake. I told myself that the peace we had finally built was worth more than the constant battle for my parents' approval. But the peace was fragile, and it didn't take long for it to shatter. One day, I came home from a business trip to find Lisa's suitcases in the hallway. Mom greeted me nervously at the door, her eyes darting between me and the luggage. Lisa left Tom, she blurted out. She had nowhere else to go. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my composure. And you didn't think to ask me before moving her in. Dad shifted uncomfortably behind Mom. She needs support. Bella, she's family. Family, the word hung heavy in the air, a reminder of all the times I had been pushed aside for Lisa. I looked at my parents, their faces a mix of guilt and determination, and I knew that the battle for their approval was far from over. Lisa settled in quickly, too quickly. She sprawled out on the couch all day, scrolling through her phone while her kids ran wild through the house. Meanwhile, I was still paying all the bills, still trying to hold everything together. One evening, I tried to have a rational conversation with her. So, what's your plan, Lisa? I asked, sitting down on the armchair across from her. She blinked at me, her eyes glazed over from hours of mindless scrolling. Plan? What do you mean? For a job, for a place to live, I clarified, trying to keep my voice steady. You can't stay here forever, Lisa. You need to start contributing. She scoffed, a harsh sound that grated on my nerves. Wow, Bella, you just love acting superior, don't you? I can't just snap my fingers and get a job, I have kids to take care of. I felt my jaw tighten, but I refused to let her bait me into an argument. I'm not saying it's easy, Lisa, but you need to start trying. We can't keep supporting you forever. She rolled her eyes and turned her attention back to her phone, effectively ending the conversation. I sighed, knowing that this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the house grew thicker. Mom, who had once been so eager to make Emma breakfast, suddenly became too busy helping Lisa's kids get ready in the mornings. Dad, who had spent hours teaching Emma chess, now had no time for their weekly matches, but somehow found time to play outside with Lisa's son. Emma noticed the change, her bright eyes filled with confusion and hurt. Mom, do Grandma and Grandpa still like me? She asked one night, her voice small and uncertain. I hugged her tight, swallowing the anger rising in my throat. Of course they do, sweetheart. They're just busy. That's all. But inside, I knew the truth. The pattern was repeating itself, and I was powerless to stop it. Lisa was once again taking center stage, and the rest of us were left in the shadows. I tried to talk to my parents about it to make them see the damage they were causing, but they were blinded by their love for Lisa, unable to see the pain they were inflicting on Emma and me. The breaking point came sooner than I expected, and when it did, I knew that something had to change, for Emma's sake and for my own. The tension in the house had reached a boiling point. Lisa's presence was a constant reminder of the favoritism that had plagued my childhood, and it was becoming increasingly clear that my parents were still blinded by their love for her. I watched as Emma, once so excited to spend time with her grandparents, began to withdraw, her bright smile fading into confusion and hurt. I tried to shield her from the chaos, but it was impossible to ignore the elephant in the room. Lisa's kids ran wild through the house, their toys scattered across the floor, while Lisa herself lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a look of bored indifference. Meanwhile, I was still covering all the bills, still trying to hold everything together. One evening, I decided to have a serious talk with Lisa. I found her in the living room, flipping through TV channels with a disinterested expression. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Lisa, we need to talk, I said, sitting down on the armchair across from her. She barely glanced at me, her eyes still glued to the screen. About what? About your plans, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You've been here for weeks now, and you haven't made any effort to find a job or a place to live. You can't keep relying on Mom and Dad to take care of you. Lisa scoffed, finally tearing her gaze away from the TV to look at me. You're one to talk, Bella. You're the one who swooped in to save the day, remember. You're the one covering all the bills. So why don't you back off and let me handle my own life? I felt my jaw tighten, but I refused to let her bait me into an argument. I'm not trying to control your life, Lisa. I'm just saying that you need to start taking responsibility for yourself and your kids. Mom and Dad can't keep supporting you forever. She rolled her eyes and turned her attention back to the TV, effectively ending the conversation. I sighed, knowing that this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the house grew thicker. Mom, who had once been so eager to make Emma breakfast, suddenly became too busy helping Lisa's kids get ready in the mornings. Dad, who had spent hours teaching Emma chess, now had no time for their weekly matches, but somehow found time to play outside with Lisa's son. Emma noticed the change, her bright eyes filled with confusion and hurt. Mom, do Grandma and Grandpa still like me? She asked one night, her voice small and uncertain. I hugged her tight, swallowing the anger rising in my throat. Of course they do, sweetheart. They're just busy. That's all. But inside, I knew the truth. The pattern was repeating itself, and I was powerless to stop it. Lisa was once again taking center stage, and the rest of us were left in the shadows. The breaking point came one afternoon when I returned home early from work, hoping to surprise Emma with ice cream after school. But as I walked through the front door, I was greeted by a scene that made my blood boil. Lisa was towering over Emma, her voice dripping with venom. You lazy, ungrateful brat. She snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. Clean this mess up right now. Emma was on the floor, hurriedly picking up toys Lisa's kids' toys, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. I saw red, a wave of protective fury washing over me. What's going on here? I demanded, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. Lisa barely glanced at me, her attention still focused on Emma. Your princess here refuses to help around the house. Someone has to pick up after these kids, and it sure as hell isn't going to be me. I took a step closer, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. You mean your kid's mess, Lisa? Emma is not responsible for cleaning up after them. Lisa finally turned to face me, her eyes flashing with indignation. Well, someone has to do it, Bella. You're never here, so someone has to keep this house running. I took another step closer, my voice shaking with fury. I'm not here because I'm working, Lisa. Unlike some people, I don't have the luxury of sitting around all day expecting to be taken care of. And Emma is not your maid. She's a child, and she deserves to be treated with respect. Lisa scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. You're never here, Bella. Someone has to keep this house running, and it sure as hell isn't going to be me. I felt something inside me snap. No, Lisa, not someone they're your kids, and it's your responsibility to take care of them. And if I ever hear you speak to Emma like that again, I swear. Lisa's eyes flashed with defiance. Yo, what, Bella? Kick me out? Go ahead. Tell mom and dad. See whose side they take. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't worried because she knew. She knew that mom and dad would choose her just like they always had. The realization was like a punch to the gut, but it also brought a strange sense of clarity. I turned to Emma, ignoring Lisa completely. Go upstairs, sweetheart, I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded, slipping past me and up the stairs. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close before turning back to Lisa, my voice cold and calm. You're right, Lisa. Mom and dad will always choose you, but I don't have to. She smirked, a look of triumph in her eyes. What's that supposed to mean, Bella? I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked upstairs, my mind made up. I knew what I had to do. As I packed our bags, I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I was done letting Lisa walk all over me, done letting my parents choose her over me. It was time to take control of my life, to put Emma first, and to finally break free from the toxic cycle that had held me captive for so long. I made a few phone calls, arranging for movers to come the next day. I would take everything I had bought, everything I had paid for, and leave the rest behind. It was a drastic move, but it was necessary for Emma's sake and for my own. As I zipped up the last suitcase, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that it was long overdue. It was time to stand up for myself, to stand up for Emma, and to finally break free from the chains of the past. With a determined stride, I walked downstairs, ready to face my parents and reclaim my life. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I knew what I had to do, and I was ready to face the consequences. I dressed quickly, my mind racing with the tasks ahead. I needed to confront my parents to make them understand that I was done being their scapegoat, done being pushed aside for Lisa. I found them in the kitchen, their faces etched with worry and confusion. They had heard the commotion the night before, had seen the movers arriving early in the morning. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know the extent of it. Bella, what's going on? Mom asked, her voice trembling as she took in the sight of the movers carrying out the furniture. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. I'm leaving, Mom. I'm taking Emma, and we're going back to our apartment. Dad's face paled, his eyes darting between me and the movers. Bella, you can't just leave. We need you here. The loan. I held up a hand, cutting him off. I've been covering the loan payments for months, Dad. I've been supporting this entire household, and for what? To be treated like a second-class citizen in my own family? Mom's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. Bella, please, we never meant to make you feel that way. We just wanted to help Lisa. I let out a bitter laugh. Help Lisa? At what cost, Mom? At the cost of my happiness? At the cost of Emma's well-being? I'm done being your backup plan, done being the one you turn to when Lisa's latest scheme falls apart. Dad's face hardened, his voice taking on a defensive edge. Bella, you're being dramatic. Lisa is family and she needs our help. I shook my head, a sad smile playing on my lips. You're right, Dad. Lisa's family. But so am I. And so is Emma. And we deserve better than this. I turned to leave, but Mom's voice stopped me in my tracks. Bella, please, we can work this out. We can find a way to make this work for everyone. I hesitated for a moment, considering her words. But then I thought about Emma. about the pain and confusion in her eyes, and I knew that I couldn't stay. Not for them, not for anyone. I'm sorry, Mom, I said softly, but I can't stay here, not like this. I need to do what's best for Emma, and that means leaving. With that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving behind the house that had never truly felt like home. As I drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a sense of freedom washing over me. I was finally breaking free from the chains of the past, finally taking control of my life. The days that followed were a blur of activity. I moved back into my apartment, unpacking the boxes that held the remnants of my old life. Emma and I settled into a comfortable routine, the tension and chaos of my parents' house fading into a distant memory. I threw myself into my work, determined to make a success of my life on my own terms. The promotion gave me financial security, and I finally started saving for the future for Emma's future. I opened a college fund for her, determined to give her the opportunities I never had. Emma flourished in the stable environment, her grades improving and her confidence growing. She joined the chess club at school, took art classes, and even started a little baking project at home. She was happy, and that was all that mattered. One weekend, I surprised her with a road trip to the beach. We drove for hours, singing along to her favorite playlists and stopping at random diners along the way. As we stood on the shore, feeling the cool water rush over our feet, I looked at her and saw the pure joy in her eyes. "This is nice," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "Just us." I pulled her into a side hug, kissing the top of her head. "Yeah, it is." And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt it. The contentment, the peace, the knowledge that I had made the right decision. I had chosen myself, chosen Emma, and in doing so, I had found a happiness that I never knew existed. The calls from my parents kept coming at first, a mix of anger and desperation. They accused me of abandoning them, of turning my back on my family, but I never answered. I couldn't go back, not after everything that had happened. One night, as I was cleaning out my phone, I hovered over their contact names, my finger poised to delete them. But then I thought about Emma, about the life we were building together, and I knew that I couldn't let the ghosts of the past haunt us any longer. I deleted their numbers one by one, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. I was done with the guilt, done with the constant struggle for their approval. I was finally free. Time passed, and life without my parents felt lighter, more peaceful. I heard through distant relatives that they had lost the house, that Lisa had moved on to her next victim, her next enabler. But I didn't dwell on it. Their problems were no longer my responsibility. Instead, I focused on the future, on building a life for Emma and me. I worked hard, saved money, and watched as Emma grew into a confident, happy young woman. And as I looked at her, I knew that I had made the right decision. I had chosen us, and in doing so, I had found my true family. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in the salve of orange and pink, Emma came out to join me. She sat down beside me, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Mom," she said softly, "are you happy?" I looked at her, my heart swelling with love and pride. "Yes, sweetheart, I am." And in that moment, I knew that it was true. I had found my happiness, my peace, my purpose. And it was all because I had chosen myself, chosen Emma, chosen us, and that was enough.